Okay, hello and welcome to another edition of WP Roundtable. I'll start with a round of intros with myself. I'm Kellen Mace, web developer from the east side of Michigan. Happy to be on tonight with a great guest. Jason up next.
Hello everyone, Jason Crawford here, Medellin, Colombia. I do content strategies and WordPress web design, and that's it.
Hi, I'm Nick Bennett, and I work at Tribune in Chicago, at OI Chicago, developing their website in WordPress.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Kyle Maurer from Jackson, Michigan, at episode 32, and I'm really stoked to bring you a phenomenal guest, somebody who is going to come and drop all kinds of wisdom on us and tell us about how to run a better podcast and how to run a better WordPress business and how to make the most of the WordPress plugin repository and the whole WordPress world and how to just run better lives. So today we are joined by Marcus Couch, somebody that I'm a big fan of, and I got to meet just a couple weeks back for the first time in person. Really, really great guy, really experienced, a lot of cool information, and a ton of questions that we want to ask him. So Marcus, why don't you just introduce yourself, talk about real quick what you do, and then we're gonna move on to the questions.
Thanks, Kyle, and guys, I'm just as excited as you are actually for this whole roundtable. So I'm really looking forward to some engaging conversation about WordPress. My involvement in WordPress, I am a full-time WordPress user as far as an entrepreneur and a business owner. I'm also a consultant for businesses that use WordPress, mostly in the enterprise and the franchise level, places that have typically more than 300 locations to them. Also, I am a supporter of the community in the form of a podcaster. So I'm the co-host of WordPress Plugins A to Z and also WordPress Weekly, which you can find at wptavern.com. And most recently, I started doing the official GoDaddy hangout that they call the Campfire with the main brand evangelist, Mendel Kurland from GoDaddy. And in addition to that, I guess, I've also got WordPress Radio, WPR.FM, which is a compilation of every podcast, and I'm going to have to add you guys as well now, that streams live and is also kind of the biggest podcast feed that there is, a big compilation of everybody in one big ball. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's pretty awesome, Marcus. Thanks for all that good information. That's a pretty good lengthy intro. You got a lot of stuff going on for sure, and we want to talk about all of it. And we've only got 1 hour to do so. But first, we got to kick off our real quick beginner segment that we do at the beginning of every episode. We're all going to talk about our quick picks of the week. So real quick, my pick of the week is Varying Vagrant Vagrants, specifically for the ability to develop using Trunk. So just a real quick summary. I'm a developer and I love developing locally, and only recently I've started doing so in what's called Trunk, which is the latest development of WordPress. So you can do your development and test it against the WordPress that is coming out in the future, and test it with all the new features and all the new bug fixes, and it's updated daily, and make sure that your code is very future-proof. And VVV, you can find it on GitHub, is a really awesome way to facilitate that. So that's my pick of the week.
Very cool. Thank you, Kyle. I'll jump in next with mine. I have 2 picks of the week, if that's allowed. I'll throw both of them in there. One is I was doing a site this week with advanced custom fields, which is a very useful plugin for adding custom fields to any custom post types that you have on a site you may be building. So I recently, in the past, I had used ACF, but never the Pro version. So recently, I know they've caught some heat recently for changing database schemas and some things weren't compatible and that kind of thing. But for new installations, new sites where that isn't an issue, trying to upgrade from the old stuff, I had no problem using it again and found the repeater and flexible content fields in the Pro version to be super helpful for my clients who every post they make and page that they make, that they're not quite sure how many of them they'll need. So to be able to add more on the fly with the Pro version has been really helpful. My other pick is on WordPress.com on their VIP page. They have a code review page. The title of it is Code Review: What we look for, and it's for any developers out there. This is a great list of things either to make sure you're doing or to make sure you're not doing. This is a list that WordPress VIP always goes back to for sites being built by some of the VIP partner agencies that are out there. So for myself, I'm not building sites as a VIP as part of an agency like that, but even still, I found this list to be really comprehensive and a lot of really great reminders of what to do and what not to do. So we can link that in the show notes. Jason, you want to jump in next here?
Sure, and I just my pick of the week is just a random article on. There's been a lot of news lately about the group in Germany fighting Google and trying to get revenue from Google on their content. But recently, we've got one coming up that Twitter trying to regain some place holdings in Google, and that's on Marketing Land. I just thought it was interesting. Wanted to share it with anybody who's interested in keeping up with the whole Google and what's going on there. And they're basically talking about how they've used the immediate search or the what's going on now type search stuff and how that could affect the websites as well. So I'll share a link to that in the show notes and hope everybody enjoys it.
Sounds interesting. That the stuff you talked about, Kellen, is fantastic related to code review. I was very interested this week to read 10up is an agency in Chicago and based out of Chicago, and they have an engineering best practices guide, which sounds like a lot of what you'd see on WordPress.com. They go into their development tools, their best practices with PHP, using version control, even project structure. So as a developer myself, I've been looking always for ways to do things better, and 10up has some great recommendations. Kyle, back to you.
Marcus, do you have a pick of the week you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do actually. I've been playing around with a plugin called Stream, and Jeff Chandler and I actually started talking about this on WordPress Weekly. Now, what it does is it essentially logs everything that anybody does, including like if you wanted to upload an image to the media library, it would log that. From the moment someone logs in, it tracks literally every bit of activity that goes along the way. Now, the real power in this is not just that you can track one site. It came about what I did this week, which is I took a network of about 100 sites, all running Stream, and I mashed their RSS feeds, their activity feeds. You can actually save in an RSS feed. So I kind of mashed those all together, kind of in a Yahoo Pipes sort of style. I did it in an OPML file, actually. And then so I did it so that I could actually look at it at my phone with an RSS reader and see every bit of activity that was going on in every one of my sites all at one time. So it's called Stream. You can find it right on the WordPress repository, and it's awesome.
That is pretty awesome, Marcus. Thanks for sharing that. I'm a big fan of the Stream plugin as well. I think it's pretty phenomenal. I've had great success using it on client sites and understanding just what activities have occurred and all kinds of other things. And we in a recent episode we had Topher DeRocha on the show before, and he's one of the contributing developers to the plugin. We got to talk a little bit about it and learn a little more about it. So it's definitely something very special. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to move into talking about you, Marcus, and learn a little bit more. So first off, I want to understand and give just a little bit of context. You have a consulting business. That's what you do during the day. And you consult for bigger companies.
Yes.
Using WordPress, specifically franchises mostly, as I understand it. Maybe you could talk a little bit about this specific vertical and how it works and what you're brought in for and what these businesses look like.
The very first project that I did like this was for what was then the third largest energy company in the country, and they did propane. And what their biggest challenge was is they went and bought about 500 different independent propane suppliers, and you can insert your King of the Hill jokes anytime you want. But the big challenge was now they had literally 400, 500 domain names, yet they wanted to maintain corporate branding throughout all of those domains, and yet still give authority to the main headquarter website. And this also was right when Google Places had just started to gain traction, so each one of those also had to have Google Places entries that went to one specific phone number. So I don't know if you guys have ever verified a Google Places entry with a postcard. Imagine doing that times like 600 and trying to, it's like trying to herd cats. It was insane. So that project was kind of the basis of what followed from then on, because I believed at the time that I was probably the only one, at least in WordPress, that had ever tackled a project that big. And so the fortunate thing that I did was I logged every single step that I did, and I also screencasted with Camtasia. I was constantly just at like 10 frames a second recording everything that I did throughout the entire process. So I was then able to make that process into a product.
That's pretty remarkable and very interesting. That what kind of like brought about this? It seems like brilliant foresight to just think about doing that. I would imagine you had something that entered this in you. You had a lot of experiences doing other things. What made you think I should document everything that I'm doing this from the start?
I was tired of going broke from projects that I couldn't remember how I did them or the processes that, I mean, you guys are coders too, and you know that there are often late nights where you're just working to get a fix, right? You're not, I don't mean a fix like that, but I mean, working to fix the problem.
Right.
But you don't often document that. And so and when you're working in that mode, you don't have time to document that. So you have to video record yourself and screencast yourself, because there might be that moment where you either catastrophically break something or you have this monumental success, and you've got to be able to identify what that is. When scientists are in a lab trying to come up with a cure, they're documenting everything, right? Why don't we? And we have every tool at our disposal to do so, and oftentimes we just don't. And so I felt that that would really make the difference in holding myself accountable, and then being able to go back and review that, and then go step by step by step. Now, subsequently, I do that on micro levels now. If there are people that I need to work with from a design aspect, or even just from a virtual assistant aspect, I will do the task myself first on video, and then go back and highlight everything, and then go, oh crap, I missed this one, and actually edit that back in and go, oh, I missed this, here's one thing you've got to look for. So the reason that you do these things is because one day I'll be dead, and I need a legacy that somebody can take over, you know. Or let's go the other way. Yeah, that's a little morbid and extreme, probably, for the first example out of the gate. But the other example is, if I have someone that I hire from an outsource perspective, and they flake on me, and they're halfway through the project, do I have to go? Should I have to go spend my time retraining somebody brand new all over again in the project, or do I just hot swap personnel? And that's what I try and do.
It's pretty cool and pretty inspiring. I think all of us are probably thinking, yeah, you know, I could see so many aspects of my life where that would, or you know, my professional life right now where that would just apply. There are so many processes in our business that that kind of documentation, that level of attention to detail would just be.
So let me ask all of you guys, how many of the four of you, how many have hired an outsourcer? Everybody?
I definitely have. More times than I can count.
Okay. How many, what would you say the percentage is that it really worked out well for you?
Yeah, great. For me, half would be lucky.
Right. The rest of you, pretty much the same ratio?
I haven't outsourced.
No, not yet. Okay. Okay.
I haven't either.
All right. Well, then, Kyle, I'll stick with you on this one. So about half. about what was the percentage of the time in that time frame of the half success that you really documented what needed to be done?
I really documented. I'd say the more successful ones were the ones where I put a lot of attention into scoping and detailing what was expected, what I expected to be delivered back by the contractor.
Right.
So that could be examples, that could be extensive write-ups, that could be whatever.
Right. So then it just becomes a question of how do we, as technical professionals, come up with the best solution to condense our time down to where we can still do those awesome, incredible documentations to hand off to somebody, yet, still be foolproof, yet also not take up a lot of our time. Because I don't have a ton of time to explain things to people. There used to be that time where I thought I was the plug-in teacher to everybody I ever met, but that becomes a limiting factor when it's midnight every night and your wife's going, "What the hell are you doing?" So, yeah, it has its ups and downs.
There's no shortage of people who want that information and that
no.
No shortage. So anyway, I'm curious. You say you had this first big project, this energy company, and you said it was a big project, and you talk about getting these 600 postcards and such, and
yeah.
So you finished this project and you didn't think that was awful. You thought, I want to do nothing but this. Talk about like why you thought that. Why you thought
it's not really I didn't think nothing but this, and believe me, I do other things, but that's the bread and butter, because I think I'm the only one that's ever done it on that scale. I don't know of anybody else who's ever done that. And if you can climb that mountain one time, then why not? Why not be a Sherpa? Why not? why not take it the whole way? And I'm not going to say any of this was easy, because it was a bitch. I mean, it was hard, and there were things that fundamentally about the project that just were crazy. I mean, these are branding people that you're talking to an energy company. These are oilmen. They don't care about style guides and things like that. They just want it to look the way they think it should look. So there's a lot of madness that went along with that. But here's the thing: you don't have to be the first guy to do something. You don't have to be the first one to do it on a big scale like that. The rule is, if I'm working on a task or a project, and if it's the very first time that I've done that, I don't care if it takes me 10 times as long to do it the first time, because I'm documenting it, because I know the second time that I do it, it's going to take me a third of the time.
That's amazing. I really like what you said about it being hard, too. That really resonates with me quite a lot, and because it's something that I talk about with my colleagues. Like, we're very interested in, for example, developing some premium WordPress products, plugins, and things of that nature. And to me, when I see something that's like really hard, a plugin that's super hard to develop, but it looks like a cool idea, I get more excited, and I say,
right,
this is an opportunity, guys, because it's hard. That we should look at that, and that stands out to me. And so when you say, working with these franchise companies was very, very difficult, and that triggered this, light bulb in your head that maybe this warrants my attention. That just speaks quite a lot to me.
And this kind of thing works for anybody. It doesn't always have to be hard. I mean, that one was. But even something that's easy for you, if you document it so that you can literally hand somebody either a task list from a project management system or a PDF or a Word file or something, you can do it on a small scale and keep replicating it. and then eventually you'll get so fast at it that it just becomes a natural part of your routine rather than something that was a project that had to be scoped. So that, you know, McDonald's doesn't make anything custom. And that is because there would be no time and there would be you know, no reason for it. I'll give you a great example. If one of you guys want to jump in, go for it while I'm talking about this. If you go into a restaurant and you order a steak sandwich, if there's a 5-star chef back there, he can make you the best steak sandwich you ever had in your life. Okay? But the problem is the restaurant can't serve steak sandwiches like that all day long because it's just not economically feasible to make one 5-star chef do it. So how does a restaurant do this? They have the head chef come up with the steak sandwich recipe, right? But they make it so that a line cook can make it. So they may make it 80% as good as what the head chef can make it, and that's good enough for the clientele of the restaurant. They still think it's an outstanding steak sandwich. And that's really what we're talking about here, is if you make a menu, then you've got to make a recipe. And that's where some people fail. They have service lists, they got a menu, but they don't have a recipe, and they don't have food costs. And therefore, they don't know they've never gone through as to how much manpower something takes. Oh, if it takes 2 weeks, oh, it should be this. Well, did you add all the wages in there? Did you add your utilities, your internet, your, you know, all these other costs that are associated with it, and you have to cost it like it's food. So that's the one, I guess, lesson of the methods that I do is I'm a head chef, and I can't cook everything, but I can make some really nice recipes that people can follow.
Very nice.
I'll share with you, Marcus, just about what I'm hearing you talk about, especially is documentation and what is documentation but self-documentation. How can you document something that you don't yourself understand? And you're speaking of it at a say a level where you'd expect someone to be able to do the job, so such as outsourcing your work. But I can also attest to the benefit of doing it for your users, or for depending, no matter what level you're working on. That's something I've been doing ridiculously ever since I started in my work, and I've been trying to make myself obsolete, and in doing that, it's only increased my job security. People know that I can explain something to them in documentation that's good, and that in itself is not quite as efficient as yours, but still valuable.
And that's right. And they don't want that documentation to stop, because that's probably the one thing that lacks in tech the most is layman's language documentation. Now, granted, I'm not outsourcing everything, and you mentioned self-documentation. There are plenty of administrative tasks and things that I do that are repetitive, that are within that scope, that, you know, it's maybe like 6 tasks deep within the actual little milestone, and I might have to do that 10 times in a row. But I'm racing myself that second time around and that third time around. I want to make sure that if I'm doing the same thing throughout the day, I want the thing that took me 10 minutes at 8 o'clock in the morning to take me 6 minutes at 1 p.m. because I should be that more advanced as far as in the day, and or caffeinated, whichever.
You must have a good lunch too.
Yeah.
I go for a walk. Yeah,
all right.
Kind of
There you go. Recharge. It reminds me also about the comparison between WordPress and other CMSs and static HTML. You know, when I first, from what you guys were talking about, when I first got into this, I was explaining to my parents, you know, kind of what I was doing, and kind of WordPress as a platform, what it allowed my clients to do. I explained that, yeah, when they want to make a simple change just to the wording or throw another image in there, it really gives them a lot of power, a lot of, you know, it really enables them to, you know, change their site and customize it and keep up on the data the way they want to, so they're not having to constantly contact a developer and wait around for that person to FTP brand new files up to the server. It really empowers the client, which is great. So I'm not going to get calls every 5 minutes to make change a comma on their site, or those simple things. So they kind of thought for a second and then said, well, won't that put you out of work though? Right? If you're giving them this such a powerful tool to enable them to make all the changes they could conceivably want, maybe not conceivably, but you guys know I'm preaching to the choir, right? If you're enabling them that much, why would they ever come back to you again, right? But it's the moral of the story is, if they have another project or they refer you to somebody else because of the killer job that you did and all this power you gave them over your site, word's going to get around and it's going to be better for everyone, right? You won't deal with the headaches of the minutia, and you'll be building bigger and better and more exciting things, and your clients will be much happier too, right? All right, with that, Marcus, we wanted to launch into, for a few minutes, we heard a little bit about it, but Marcus Couch Consulting, your company, can you delve into for us what first led you to move into consulting for a business using WordPress, to think that you could launch into doing that?
Quite simply, I got sick of clients that didn't have WordPress. I got people that said, can you help me with my Magento site, my cart and all this? And the only way that I would do that is if we converted it over to WooCommerce and a WordPress platform. And if they didn't want to do that, then I didn't work with them. It's easy to use for me. Look, I'm not I'm not going to sacrifice my own time for desperation of somebody else. I'm not doing it. Either they see the light or they don't. And this is my platform that I've used for 10 plus years. I've looked at just about every single plugin there is in the repository, and for me, if I'm going back to the chef analogy, if I make steak sandwiches all day, I don't need to be flipping pancakes.
Yeah, definitely. Can you describe for us the services you typically provide for clients? The clients who see the light.
We do. A lot of what we do is actually that. We control two different aspects of it. It's not only from an SEO standpoint, so we're talking about rankings and things like that. And I do not give people a ranking report in the traditional fashion. A lot of people will just say, like, tacos, and then tacos in this city, in this city, in this city, and here's where you rank. I actually provide people with a map overlay of each individual city, so you see the border of the city, and then there's a color of it, depending on what your ranking is, and then there's the number of where your rank is. And you'd be surprised city to city where people can vary in Google rankings depending on what the competition is. So we provide that in different regions throughout the United States. So, for example, if somebody has a business in Southern California that has maybe 30 different locations, they're going to be in San Diego, they'll be in Orange County where I am, they'll be in Long Beach, Los Angeles, Inland Empire, towards Riverside, in that area. And that's a huge, that area right there is bigger than most states. So for that, you've literally got 5 or 6 different regions and probably 100 different cities, probably more. And you really need to gauge what's going on. So not only do we give them rankings like that, but we also monitor reputation score in that end. So we look at things like Yelp and Golden Spoon in the case of restaurants, and TripAdvisor for travel franchises, and so what it does is it analyzes and gives a sentiment score. So if it sees things like the word good, great, awesome, incredible, it gives that specific weight. If it's things like sucks, horrible, slow, took forever, you get the idea, then it gives it a negative connotation. So the benefit to the franchise, to the major brand on this, is they can see what franchisee down the pipe is not holding their weight and is giving bad service and therefore bad brand reputation, who's doing a good job, and then who could use the most help. And then subsequently we also search the rest of the country, in particular markets that they're not in, because if and this has happened on a few occasions, it's been actual search engine availability, I guess you could say, and opportunity that allowed people to actually move into new markets where there was a lot of search volume, but it was an underserved area. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of what we do in one package, and then we help the internal marketing teams to evangelize exactly what it is that they're doing, how they can further promote the brand. We work with the social media arms to let them know how to work together with other teams, and we also help them to develop an editorial content, which is like a alien term when you talk to different people about this in branding. Ironically enough, they all know what TV commercials are going to air, but they have no clue as far as what content they want to put on the web. That's really what we do.
Very cool. So the map, overlay and some of the different infographics and stuff that you're talking about. You use a third-party service of some kind for that, or it's kind of a homebrew?
It's a KML overlay that runs on Google Earth, Google Maps. So, but we can just do it on Google Maps, and we just can zoom it into a specific area, and then we can save like where the coordinates are zoomed into and what the zoom level is, and then we just put either PowerPoint presentations together, or lately I've been playing around with Aesop Story Engine to create kind of a cool business presentation as far as where each one is. That's cool. It reminds me of Troy Dean from WP Elevation. He has a presentation he's given at WordCamps all around the country. It's like it's 101 ways to raise your prices. It's all supposed to be things that you can do to heighten what you're giving to the client, that kind of thing. And one of the tools he recommends is a third-party service, and it takes all their analytics data, but it bakes it into a really nice-looking, comprehensive graphs. And I think some of them are map-based, kind of like what you're talking about. So very cool. It sounded great. And you hit on accountability, by the way. And with accountability comes transparency. The two work hand in hand. And how you were talking about, oh my gosh, are you afraid the client's going to know too much or make you obsolete, or any of these particular things? People are a little shocked that I put people in my project management system, like my clients are in my project management system, even having conversations with the workers and the people that are doing all the work. Now, and I preload a lot of these things sometimes 6 months in advance as far as projects go. So put a client come on with me and go into the project management system and just go, yeah, I got the whole roadmap. Sure. I'm sure you could find self-surgery books on the internet too, but I doubt you're going to be using them. But that really helps, because also somebody understands the scope when they see that the thing of, hey, change this, is actually an hour-and-a-half long process that takes 70 steps. Yeah. So they're a lot less likely to put on extra changes when they know that the process has already been built and already in place. Yeah, that's great. It reminds me of a lot of developers asking their users to go to GitHub and file issues there, rather than collecting emails that you then have to go log. It's kind of cutting out the middleman in a sense. Exactly. Back to consulting, though. Can you describe your typical client for us? We talked about franchises. It sounds like in businesses with, you said, more than 300 locations. Are there any other types that you typically would serve? Like I said, I did. We've done work with one of the largest energy companies in the country. Certain things I can't mention, but I'll just say, one of the biggest taco restaurants in the country. That should help you figure it out. We do actually quite a few different kinds of restaurants, and then lately we've been getting into. There's a fitness facility that's on the West Coast. They have about 100 different locations, so those types of clients. But then again, I've got I got the best cosmetic surgeon in New York City too. He's got one location, so yeah, it really does vary. Cool. Before I turn it over to some of the other guys here, I have one more for you. Yeah. You keep saying we. I'm kind of curious about your team or the folks that you have as a part of that. Can you describe that for us? Well, I operate things in layers, and a lot of it is outsourced, and we have some local people here that help out as well. But if someone wants to come into the organization, I have a guy that's outsourced as well, but he's kind of my recruiter. So we'll post job ads out there for specific tasks. Sometimes I will hire somebody just for one particular client and never put them on anybody else except for that one task. Even if it's just even if I knew that a full-time person would cost me twice as much as a part-time person, but I could get the full-time person to do 5 times more things, I'm still going to stick that one person on the one client because I want them to do 5 times as good of a job, and I really need them to understand the scope of what the results are that the client wants. Mm-hmm. So my team is very fluid. There are at minimum 6 people with me at all times, and at maximum we've had as many as 120. It really just depends on the load and shifting that around as far as the necessity and the task. Right. There's one client in particular that runs in waves, so it's almost like the tide. Sometimes the activity, it's tax-based, so sometimes the activity is just crazy, and in the middle of summer, nothing. So we plan for that, and then that's when we move them to other projects. So it's always shifting, and I'll tell you how I learned about it. How I learned about outsourcing. It was all podcasts. It was really there was one called Your First Virtual Assistant. There's other ones out there, other podcasts that I literally downloaded everything, and I'm talking like even ones that had 3 episodes in 2007. I went and found them and listened to them. And listened to them religiously, like over and over and over again, to find out what the problems were, what the bottlenecks were, and because this was my money I'm spending here, so I wanted to make sure that it was done right. And so I started really slow and really did half the work myself, and then started to depend on somebody else. And then that moment where I said I need these changes done, and then the second that I looked at it and they were done in the exact way that I wanted, I'm like, I got it. This is it. So everything that I do is research based. I have to know exactly what the risks are before I step in. And the reason for that is because I've lost my ass several times. Like in bad partners, bad procedures, bad products. And I can't do that anymore.
I'm sure you have a rock solid process by now, or pretty close to it, with freelance folks. I've heard there are ways to test them, from what I understand too. One is give them a really small project at the outset, right? And see how that goes. If it goes really well, and they're prompt about it, great communication, then move on to bigger things, right? You don't just jump in with here's the big project I need your help with, right?
Yeah, everybody gets a 2-week trial, and through that, before you even get to the trial phase, let's just say if it's a graphic designer, I'll have them design a banner that every other candidate has designed before them.
Yeah.
So I want to know where they are in relation to somebody else. And it's the same instructions, the same Dropbox that's got all the backgrounds and all the rest of it, and the pictures of the people that are, really nice, transparent backgrounds and such, and then give them 2 or 3 dimensions and say make all of these dimensions, and then find out who only sends you one of them.
Yeah. Where do you go to find folks? At Elance or Odesk or one of those services, or something else?
I use a number of different sources. Elance and Odesk are only for short-term projects, something that like I need a banner tomorrow and I don't have any other resources to do it. Who can do it for me real quick? But for the most part, there are a lot of different job sites that you can go to and post an ad. And for me, that's like in the Philippines. I use different sites there. I don't use India anymore. I used to, but that's one. And then Craigslist is another one. And I really highlight the job really well. And I also, by the way, use Google Forms as the application process, because then it saves it to a Google Doc, as far or a Google spreadsheet, and then my recruiter guy gets notified, and he can vet them based on the results in the spreadsheet.
Very cool. Cool thing.
Great system.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, Marcus.
Thanks.
I'm curious about getting your take on some, just to hear you talk about it a little bit, about differentiating yourself as a business. So there's a lot of service providers, there's a lot of people out there who can do development, consulting, marketing, whatever you need. And I tend to believe that there's a lot of fish in the pond, but that really it's a very, very, very big pond. So it's okay. But that said, what do you think, and what advice would you have to those seeking to start their own businesses, agencies, consultancies, freelancing, whatever? How important is it to differentiate oneself from everyone else? And is it important, and how important is it?
Well, the two things you need to differentiate yourself with is this. One, you need to make sure that this potential person or client or sale that you're about to make knows one thing, and that is what result are you going to give them and when. Okay? That's the first thing. And the second thing is you got to show them, if you want to stand out, that you are willing to work your ass off. I'm talking about, hey, need me to Snapchat myself to you working on your project at 4 in the morning? And I'm talking about getting up at 4? Yeah, I'm there. You want to see me eating lunch and working on your stuff, at Starbucks, whatever it is that I'm doing, Panera, at home, whatever, fine. You want your wife to call me and tell me how good of a mood you're in and help you out and embellish it with some more projects that are going to be happening today? Great, I'll do that. I will not stop until I get the sale. That's just the way it is. And if that means that I have to deal with somebody with impossible demands, then yeah, I'm going to take that, because I know that 99% of them out there can't meet my drive. They can't meet my focus, and they can't meet my determination. So does that set you apart? Yeah, of course it does. I knew, we didn't talk about podcast stuff, but I knew early on that WordPress podcasting itself would never make me a dime, but I knew that my efforts because of it would. And the relationships that I've garnered because of it would. And the fact that if I'm bidding on a particular job for a company that's using WordPress, I can say, go Google your firm that's bidding you and WordPress, and then go Google my name and WordPress, and let's see who the hell knows what they're talking about. And guess what? That's work. That's 3 years of work to make that name, and that's what you have to do.
I like that. That's really inspiring and super, super, super cool. Totally hits home with me very well. I think so. In addition to that, the things that you've talked about, you've also kind of like set yourself apart a little bit as, or at least as I understand it, serving certain types of clients and providing certain types of services, like a very well-honed skill set and experience base, where certain clients coming to you are going to hit a home run because you're just a perfect fit for them. What advice would you have to those looking to kind of like find that place? You serve the franchise clients, and it's not a lot for somebody like me to just say, I make WordPress websites. We're at a point where that's not super special anymore. So for those smaller people getting started, looking to find their spot, where can we specialize? And just what would you say about that?
Find the thing that you're the best at. If you're the best at setting up WooCommerce, but you really suck at the design aspect of it, become a WooCommerce specialist. If you are incredible at making landing pages within WordPress, but maybe not so much with navigation stuff and hierarchy and blogging every day and all of that, become that. So what was put in front of me as far as franchises and larger companies was because it was just thrown on my lap, and it was a project that seemingly either I was stupid enough to take or ballsy enough to take, one of the two. And I didn't look at it as, this is something cool I think I can replicate from now on. But it became something that I went, wait a second, this is something that is left up to 5 people in a marketing department in a company with 10,000 employees. And the information that they give franchisees down the road sucks as far as how they're supposed to interact on Twitter and what their employees are supposed to share about it, you know, at work and in that situation. And that's where you've got to find yourself, right? I mean, there are athletes out there that are great in basketball and baseball and football, and they have to choose one, and they choose the one that makes them the happiest and the one that they're the best at. And that's where you just kind of have to find yourself and make it something that you enjoy, yet it's not easy, because you're going to get bored if it's easy.
I love that.
Hey Marcus, I've got one that's been kind of near to me lately.
Okay.
Kyle and I have been discussing this, but how do you deal with your clients? Do you charge by the project, hourly? How do you do that? How do you determine which projects or which clients you work that way? And can you give some advice on that end?
Okay. I've worked myself into a role where I can charge a minimum retainer. And that comes with a certain statement of work of things that are going to get done and performed within that month. So it's typically a long-term contract, 12 months on up. Some of them are 4-year contracts. So really, you have to. There's a balance to it. If it goes over that specific retainer, sure, then an hourly rate kicks in. There are other people that I have that are on retainers that come in and want a full-blown kind of custom mini site or something like that put together with a lot of functionality to it. We'll bid that out separately, but we'll give them a good rate because they're a regular recurring client. So that's really how it works. But if somebody said, you know, what's your hourly rate for doing a website, I probably wouldn't do it like that because first, I'm not really a designer. We have, you know, we refer them to other studios and places like that. We're more of a marketing company, so that's really how it is. We don't really take things like just by hourly, but you have to work yourself up to that. If you're just trying to make some money and pay the rent, it's a lot different. So start slow, but try and get to that level where you can get some sort of a recurring, guaranteed type of an income. But the thing is, you got to over-deliver every month, and then you'll never have problems with billing. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm writing the check. No problem, no problem. I want this to continue."
That's pretty cool. I'm interested in kind of like evaluating, and it's always a tough decision to try and figure it out with our clients. What's the right fit, especially with smaller projects. Or projects that like could be tangential with different aspects, you know, or they could extend and have different features or phases. Is this a retainer type project, or is this something that we should scope out and have a full price for?
Well, here's the thing: you should always scope it out. Yeah, you always got to scope it out, Kyle, because like I said in the onset, you got to know what your food costs are. So if you know that it's going to be this much in resources, then you know how much that's going to cost you in time, in money, in server, in hosting, in plugins, in themes, and all of the other stuff. And that's the importance of documentation, because I did it in documented form the first time, it was easy to make it a product the second time and know how much that product cost the second time. So here's the thing: if you're a developer and you're just starting to get clients, say you got one client, document everything that you do with that one client, and I guarantee you the second client is going to be so much better and so much easier and so much faster for you. And you'll be able to take that second client, kind of tweak that little template that you did of your tasks that you need to do, and then replicate it and copy and paste that same thing again and again and again, and then make it so simple that an outsourcer can do it. You document it down to the step of like trying to teach a 6-year-old that's never used the internet ever how to get these complex tasks done incrementally, and you'll grow so fast. People will be just screaming at you to do more and more work when you can really hone it down that much. So in this whole thing, I'm just like my head in my brain, the steps in my head is the product. I just go and have people execute it.
That's great. I love that. So we've run through a lot of our time already, Marcus. So I still got a few things that I'm just dying to ask.
Okay.
This has been super valuable. This is you've got so much good information to share. I feel like I'd like to just cover podcasting just a little bit, even though there's so much more business things that I'd love to ask, and we'll probably have to get you back on the show again another day.
Okay, I'm happy to anytime. You know that.
Thanks a lot, Marcus. So I'm going to have to skim through and just ask a couple of the bigger questions that I had about podcasting.
Okay.
All right. So what are some, in your opinion, ingredients that make a really great podcast?
Well, here's the thing. Like WordPress podcasts, are we talking here?
Something that people will listen to and subscribe to and repeatedly listen to.
Okay, the best podcasts are evergreen, which means they're useful all the time. Okay, when I talk, for example, like on the plugins podcast that I'm on, I try and talk about plugins that are new, that'll be relevant down the road, and that can be useful at any time with any kind of installation. Okay, so I don't really try and get too granular or meta with what I talk about. So I try and give value, and that's really the biggest thing, is give value. You got to know that, you know, the title shouldn't be the whole script of your show. You know, it should be, what are we going to do in this episode that's going to give value to the person that's listening on the other end? Because if you give them that trust and that value every single episode, people are going to be dying for that next one to be coming out. And that's the thing, is you got to give them your best. You got to that like, you know, like the share of the week and the, you know, the top tips and things. You got to give that to everybody and make sure that you connect with them from a technical standpoint, but almost kind of in a spiritual standpoint, from the sense that you love this stuff. You love WordPress, and just by listening to my voice, you know that's true, because I do, and because it's something that, for me, I try and make sure that everyone knows that I'm looking at it from a perspective of what will it benefit them, and that's my biggest advice. Whether you have a music show or a show about, you know, frogs or WordPress, it doesn't make a darn bit of difference. You are competing with PlayStation and cable and God knows what, you know, YouTube and everything else. So for them to spend that 20 minutes with you in their ears or looking at you on the screen, you better give them something good, because they got Duck Dynasty on in the other room, and they're going to go check it out if you're boring.
Yeah. Inspiring. I'm inspired and very encouraged. What would be some, maybe just conversely, not to dwell on anything negative too much, but just low-hanging through good examples of things that you could point out that are easy mistakes or common mistakes that podcasters might make that would really reduce the likelihood of people subscribing or listening to another episode?
I think that the biggest thing that podcasters mistake is they need to take themselves out of the show. you've got to not exist in that moment, and it's got to be about them. So I don't care what my co-host did during the week that I didn't talk to him. I don't want to know what the weather is there. I don't want to know what his kids are doing or the sports team of his local place or anything like that, because nobody cares about that stuff. They want to know, in the case of like WordPress, they want to know what's going on in WordPress. If that were the case, I'd just have the Marcus Couch Show, right? I'd have the coolest blog on the internet if they really wanted to know about me. But they don't. They just want to know about plugins. And I'm cool with that. I'm cool to be that conduit. And it's something for me that, here's the thing that people don't understand and they don't get, is that I reviewed plugins for myself in the repository every single day. Like, I would go and like look at 30 plugins and try and figure out like which ones are going to really work for my site really well. And I decided that I'd share that and give value to other people, and that's how it came about.
Well, I certainly hope that there isn't no one that cares about Marcus Couch, because that's the premise of our show, is those people who do care about Marcus Couch, here's an opportunity to learn a little bit more about this this guy who delivers so much value week in and week out.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, I care. If I'm the only one who watches this episode, then, well, whatever. But worth my time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so we've got just a few more quick questions that we'll run through. I don't know if the guys have any more other questions that they want to ask. But I'm curious on your suggestions on other people who might be good guests on the show that maybe have valuable things to share that you might recommend. Can we give a shout out to?
Geez. Matt Medeiros is always a great guest. You got Pippin Williamson, who's I've been on like 5 shows, and Pippin's been on every one of them with me, which is funny.
He was a guest before our show.
Let's see. Steve Zengit. Have you ever talked to Steve from Zeke?
I've talked to him many times, and he's agreed to be on the show. We haven't arranged that.
Boy, so many. You got Jeff Chandler. He's always a great guest.
He's going to be on in about 4 weeks.
Great. Yeah, there's so many. I mean, we have such a Chris Lemma is one of my idols. I mean, I'm trying to be more Lemma-like. Is that a term?
Aren't we all?
In the sense of like this is one of the rare occasions I've actually ever spilled this info to anybody, and I'm kind of thinking, boy, I should be trying to give this kind of stuff out more often and at WordCamps and things like that. So I'll have to document it first.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good stuff, and those are definitely great suggestions, and you will see all of them on this show. I guarantee it.
Great.
Let's see. Do you guys have any other questions? Anybody else?
I'm just listening in awe. That's I'm listening to a podcast master here and just trying to soak it all in.
Well, I still do it out of my bedroom, so it never changed in 10 years.
Well, if it's a nice bedroom, then
it's turned into an office now,
Yeah. All right. So we got to do. This is a staple question for us, but in particular for you, I think we've got to ask it.
Okay.
Coolest plugins we've never heard of.
Caldera Shortcode Engine, and in the repository you can find it as My Shortcodes, and it is the most badass plugin. I mean, I put it on every one of my sites, and you can literally take CSS, HTML, PHP, JavaScript, whatever you want, put it in this thing. Even, by the way, other shortcodes in this thing, which means you can take HTML and then add a shortcode and then make that into a shortcode that you insert somewhere else, and it does it. Because how it does is it actually pre-renders the shortcode process before it actually displays the content. So Nick Kramer from South Africa is the developer of that, and it is really worth checking out because there are processes that people go, oh, I got to modify the whole theme to do that. No, man, I can do that in like 15 seconds with Caldera Shortcode Engine. And the beautiful thing about it is the short codes that you make and the processes, say like it's PHP, you can actually export that in the Pro version as a plugin. So it's like a thing that poops plugins out. So it's pretty cool. You can use it.
Yeah. That's a pretty good one, and I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, in the repository it's known as My Shortcodes.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, is there anything that that maybe we failed to ask you that would have been valuable? In particular, think about things that are relevant or topical at this particular time. I certainly would love to have you on the show again in the future, because I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
I'd love to. I'd love to grill another guest if you want to ambush somebody. I'll join in and there you go. Get them. Boy, there's so much in WordPress, and it's so hard to even cover it in an hour. I guess the biggest thing that I see from the standpoint of where I'm coming from is that I love seeing the actual WordPress podcast community starting to grow. And when I started the WordPress radio site about a year and a half ago, I think there were like 9 podcasts, and then half of them, like WP Bacon and a couple of other ones, basically faded out. But now we're up to almost 20 again worldwide. And that's really a testament to how things are going. And then I'm seeing more and more podcasts just starting 2 or 3 episodes in. And not everybody knows each other, which is kind of weird. So I think we're going to have our own little sub-community pretty soon. So I encourage everybody out there, if you enjoy this show, consume as much WordPress stuff out there as you can. You'd be surprised at the different conflicting stories and viewpoints that you might hear from show to show. So it's definitely an entertaining thing, and it helps in productivity. I can't tell you how many times I've just kind of had a podcast on in the background, and I hear them say something that something does, and I'll be like, what, wait. And you listen to it, and there's really, you don't see it in their show notes, or sometimes they'll ask, like, what do you use for project management, or what kind of apps do you like? And that's really the value in it. So I love WordPress podcasts. I encourage everybody out there, just consume as much as you can. You could do a little less pop music and pop culture and all that other stuff, and start to get into this a little bit more, and then you'll start to absorb the language and start to talk like WordPress podcasters too.
I love that. Definitely thanks for sharing that, Marcus, because I totally really agree with you, and I think that's so cool that the WordPress podcasting community is kind of growing a little bit. And I've been feeling a lot like I'm the only one who thinks that there aren't enough WordPress podcasts, because that's me. I look at all my podcasts on my phone. I put every WordPress podcast there, and there aren't enough for me. I've listened to them all, and half the days of the week I have to open it up and listen to a backlog recording from the past because there's not enough new.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm the same way, and we'll get there. Believe me, we'll get there. The rate of growth that WordPress has right now, we're going to get there very quickly. And so for me, like when I started WordPress Radio, that was the reason, is I wanted to have that one place where everybody could go, because my eyes are always on the community as far as where all the podcasts are. So I thought, well, why don't I just put them all in one place? That way everybody knows who's new and who's still around and all of that. I kind of sometimes slack, and I need to maybe hire somebody to take care of the updating on that. I don't do it as often as I do, but I do update the stream every day.
I mostly am interested in hearing the scene zine.
I'll have to bring that back up. I brought that down because of, and what Kyle's bringing up is, before I was involved in WordPress podcasting, I was one of the first podcasters. I started in the tail end of 2004. In fact, I just did my 10-year anniversary like a couple days ago. And I was one of the very first. It had come about because I owned a record company when I lived in Chicago, and had done a lot of major music label bands and put on a lot of showcases. and done these kind of CD compilations of all the bands and interviews and things. So I had all of this content. And when I found out about podcasting, it was really just of a need that I wanted to put this content on. And I got to know Adam Curry and Dave Weiner, the guys who invented podcasting, and they were kind of forming a company with another guy, and brought my content online, actually did some podcast stuff, and then they're like, well, we have some sponsor stuff for you if you want that. And I'm like, yeah, bring that. And so that's back in the days where we were hand encoding our own RSS feeds every time a podcast episode would come out. And that's how I found WordPress, because my buddy Julian Smith was like, hey man, there's this thing WordPress, and it does all that stuff for you, and you can put your show notes right in it, it does the RSS feed for you and all that. I'm like, I'm in, whatever makes it easier. And that's how it started with me in WordPress. WordPress podcast came way later. I was wanting to put the music show aside. Jeff Chandler was kind of shutting the tavern down at the time, and he was going to stop WordPress Weekly. And I asked him at the time if he would consider having me as a co-host, and his answer was, nope, not going to do it. And so I wasn't. And so I was going around to the other podcasts. I'm like, hey, I think I have something to contribute. Can I be on your show? And so, ironically, the Plugins podcast that I'm on, like the week that I was going to email him, his current his co-host then quit, and he put out a call and said, hey, who wants to be the co-host of the show? And the next week I was the co-host, and so we've been doing it ever since. And then we had Jeff on as a guest, and then suddenly he wants me on his show now. Imagine that.
Imagine that. You're gonna get messages from us after this episode, maybe.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Have you ever considered more podcasting?
Yes, I have actually. I actually started this thing called the Daily Plugin, where I was going to do a plugin review every single day, and I made it 4 days, and I went, no, this isn't going to happen.
That would be a big undertaking.
Video podcast, to mention that, yeah.
Wow.
I may do it now, though, because you never know, because this Google Hangouts thing makes it a hell of a lot easier. But that's still a lot of bandwidth that I don't have right now.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. There's a lot that goes into it, which I'd love to talk about at greater length on another occasion.
Sure.
So real quick, what events or in-person occasions might anybody bump into Marcus Couch again this year, next year?
No plans yet. I haven't booked anything yet. Looking forward to seeing where the WordCamp USA is going to be. Hopefully, I'm praying for Vegas because I think that would be easier on everybody's pocketbook from flights and lodging perspective. And it's a 4 hours drive for me, so I wouldn't like that. I don't know. It's hard for me to say right now. I often attend things like search engine strategies. If anybody wants to attend that, that's typically where they can find me. I go to Affiliate Summit. I'm always at Affiliate Summit West, which is in Las Vegas every year. So this year it's in January 2015. Been thinking about Pressnomics as far as that conference goes, but haven't gotten a ticket to that yet. So that's my rundown, I guess.
That's pretty cool. Well, I hope to bump into you. We're at pretty different sides of the country right now, but it'd be cool to bump into you at more events in the future. So
yeah, come on out here to Southern California, man. All you guys, you probably enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure we would. What's not to enjoy in sunny California? All right. So that's about all the time we've got for today. I want to kind of wrap it up. I just want to say thank you very, very much, Marcus, for joining us on the show. You talk about making your podcast valuable, and I think you really, really helped us do that today. You've got so much experience, information to share, and just really compelling stuff. And I just appreciate the time that you gave us and all the good advice.
Thanks. It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marcus. Really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And definitely keep doing what you're doing, because I speak for the rest of the guys. We really value all your other podcasts, and I think it's an important part of the WordPress community that that you're contributing to. So we value it. So keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. I mean, that's really the whole reason why it's done. It's value to the community.
Awesome. Well, that's episode 32, folks. Thanks a lot for watching.
Thanks.